Hello again. I'm always a little uneasy when I hear people loudly proclaiming their belief in things for which there is literally not a shred of evidence. If the belief being championed is a purely personal one, say in the existence of flying saucers, then I usually ignore it. It's nothing to me what people wish to subscribe to in the way of personal belief. Sometimes, though, irrational beliefs can have a pernicious effect on other people or upon society, and then I sometimes feel called upon to speak out. This is the case when it is claimed that there were communities of black people in Britain 2,000 or 10,000 years ago. The other day, children's author Malorie Blackman called for black history to be taught all year round in British schools and not just for 1 month a year. In furtherance of this idea, she told the BBC, "My ancestors' history did not start with slavery. Black people have been in this country since Roman times, if not before." Blackman may be seen in the thumbnail to this video, and I give a link to the interview in the description to this video. The first of these statements of hers is plainly false. Of course her ancestors started with slavery. It was a universal custom in all cultures across all parts of the world. My own ancestors certainly started in connection with slavery because Britain was famous for selling slaves to Europe even before the Roman invasion. Slavery was practiced in ancient times in China, India, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, all over the world. For Blackman to claim that her ancestors did not start in slavery is weird. Of course, what she is really doing here is assuming slavery to be synonymous with the transatlantic slave trade. The hope is, among enthusiasts for black history, that eventually we will forget that slavery was once a universal custom and we'll start to view it only as some wicked activity practiced by white Europeans against black people from Africa. It's propaganda. Good try, Miss Blackman, but not quite good enough. The claim that black people lived in Britain during the Roman occupation is a deliberate attempt to stake a claim in our history. It is an emerging foundation myth which roots sub-Saharan Africans in early British history. There are two pieces of supposed evidence for this the idea of black people in Roman Britain. The first is that it is claimed that there is scientific evidence, skeletons of black Africans that have been found in this country, which date from that time. There are two such skeletons, one in York and one in Sussex, and the skulls from both have been measured and analysed by using a computer program known as Fordisc. That's Fordisc. The remains in York are of a woman who is known as the Ivory Bangle Lady, and the program supposedly showed her to be of African descent. In Sussex, the so-called Beachy Head Lady was also analysed in the same way with the same program and declared to be a black woman from sub-Saharan Africa. On the strength of this, striking reconstructions were made showing black women who supposedly lived in this country thousands of years ago, and the myth grew from there. Using Fordisc, though, other than within very special and specific parameters, is all but useless. Even within those parameters, in optimal circumstances, it's successful in only one case in 100 in divining the ethnicity of a skull. In the description to this video, I give a link to Elliot and Collard's paper in 2009, which goes into this. I'll just quote a little bit from it now so people can see what I'm talking about. They ran 200 skeletons of known ancestry. That's to say that they knew the ethnicity of the skeletons beforehand. They ran them through the Fordisc program and then they collated the results. The findings were The results of the analyses suggest that Fordisc's utility in research and medico-legal contexts is limited. Fordisc will only return a correct ancestry attribution when an unidentified specimen is more or less complete and belongs to one of the populations represented in the program's reference samples. Even then, Fordisc can be expected to classify no more than 1% of specimens with confidence. Yeah, this is what you won't be told when you read about the ivory bangle lady in York. I give a link to a bit about the ivory bangle lady also in the description to this video. No one will mention this when you're hearing about the black Romans in Britain. We can be absolutely certain that in the case of the supposed Romans in York and Sussex, that this programme is useless, because when the DNA of one of the skeletons, that from Sussex, was analysed, it was found that there was not a trace of African DNA, and in fact she came from Cyprus. This means that there is literally no objective evidence whatsoever that black people lived in Britain at the time of the Romans. I've been through the other indirect evidence about the Aurelian Moors at Hadrian's Wall recently. There's no point repeating it. They weren't black at all. We're left with a slight puzzle. When people like Malorie Blackman make statements of this sort and claim that these black people in Roman times existed in Britain, do they know that there is no evidence for what they are saying? Are they engaging in deliberate deception? Personally, I don't think so. I think that she's just not bothered to look into the matter and simply repeats what everybody else says. I have to say that at every school in the country this month, the pupils have been told this very same falsehood about Roman Britain, so it's not surprising that it's now generally believed. All cultures and nationalities have their own mythology about their origins and importance. These are the stories they tell to make themselves feel special. We've got such stories in Britain, obviously, about Boadicea and Magna Carta, Alfred the Great, all sorts of things. What we are seeing over the last few years is a mythology being fashioned for black people in Britain, which proves, at least to their satisfaction, that they have always been living in this country. This is why the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus is roped in, and it's claimed that he was black, which of course he was not. When Blackman says black people have been in this country since Roman times, if not before, those last few words refer to another part of this emerging mythology, the Cheddar Man hoax. This was the supposed discovery that people living in Britain 10,000 years ago were actually black. It's not true, of course, but that too is now fast growing, becoming in the eyes of those who adhere to this growing mythology another fact.